Hey guys, Charles Barber here, and today I want to shoot a quick video about some ways that you can increase your energy and really start to heal your body naturally. You know, one of the most simple things in the world we can do is drink good, clean water. And I get a lot of questions in the Wellness Center about this. I get a lot of questions at my seminars. What kind of water do I drink? What's the healthiest water? Should I be drinking this? Should I be drinking that? How much should I be drinking? And there's a lot of good reasons why. With so many different water products on the market, from machines that can filter your water, to things you can add to your water to clean it, to certain filters, it can be overwhelming. So before we go into those tips and tricks, I really just kind of want to talk about water as a whole first and foremost. Because we have to drink water, and we need to drink more water than we're probably already drinking. But the key thing to realize, and one thing you might want to even look into, is that your body a lot of times is starving for hydration. But one of the key things to look into is there's a book. It's called Your Body's Many Cries for Water. You gotta Google it and check it out. It changed my life. When I was looking at first healing my body and ways and modalities to do that, I was on a really tight budget. And one of the things that popped up was water. And through my other research of working with herbalists and Taoists and people that really were the aficionado of health and wellness, they always talked a lot about spring water. But before I go into those details, I really just want to take a moment here and let's just think about water as a whole. We see that 70-80% of the earth is made of water. We see that our body is similar to that ratio. We see that plants have that similar ratio. So when we think about it, water's everywhere. Another thing that's kind of interesting is waters can be holy, right? You've ever heard of holy water? Why isn't there holy tomatoes? Well, when we start to look at water in that essence, we do see that there are some spiritual connotations. For me personally, I find those very, very intriguing and something that I really look into. Because one thing we found through Dr. Emoto's work, which you can check out his, is that through our thoughts, through words, basically vibrations, water can actually attune itself to a certain structure. And through that structure, it can actually hold memory. So for instance, there was a study done by Dr. Emoto, and he had 3 dishes of water and rice. And he actually used spring water in this experiment, believe it or not. But he went to one bowl of rice water and said positive things. Love you, thank you. Then he went to the second bowl and said bad things. You're ugly, you disgust me. Then he went to the third one and actually didn't go to the third one. There was no winking. He did nothing. And what he found was the one bowl of rice that had positive words affirmed to it, it actually started to ferment. The one that he said negative words to actually turned bad. It molded out. And then the one that he neglected, it actually molded out as well, but it molded out twice as fast as the other one. So this is kind of interesting. We're over here talking about water, ways to hydrate yourself, ways to heal yourself, but then emotions come up. Well, something to think about, right? Because if we affect the way our water is inside of us through our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, then do we have the power to structure the water that we drink prior? Say we have chaos going on within, can we structure water before we drink it? The answer to that question is yes, but it has to be the right water. You see, water has intelligence, and when you run it through machines, when you pull it from rivers and lakes, and then run it through machines, add chemicals to it, it loses that intelligence. But when we look out in nature and we see water, say, bubbling up from a spring, we see that there is some intelligence still there. And the way that we're able to see that is through its ability to restructure or structure itself. Now, there's a lot of information about how this can and can't happen, but at the end of the day, it makes most common sense for us to drink water from the earth. However, our environment is extremely polluted nowadays. So for us to be able to just go out into the backyard and drink from a spring, we would get sick. So we really have to be conscientious on where we source our water. But first and foremost, something that I would like to talk about for me and my personal journey is I always sought out spring water. And as I found out, the Earth's environment, the environment is messed up, that it really can be tricky on what type of water to choose if you are spring hunting water. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll use a certain database known as findaspring.com, and I'll use that to help locate springs that other people have already went to, tested that water, and confirmed that it's good. I'll then go and find that water there. And that's something that I typically tell people to look for first. If you don't have the time to hunt spring water, another thing you can do is actually purchase spring water from certain companies. Some companies, and I have no affiliation with these guys, like Mountain Valley, the Crazy Water out of Mineral Wells, Mountain Valley is out of Arkansas. These guys actually bottle their water in glass. Now they do run some of this water through an ozone machine, so it does have some type of filtration, which some would say would denature the ability or the intelligence of it to be restructured. But I'm going to tell you, that's a little much. I believe that as long as we can drink water from the earth, we're going to be getting the most optimal source of liquid water, hydration, for our body. Just like I have here, I think we're drinking the Crazy Water today. You can see that that's nice, clean, and clear. And one thing that I do notice is that when I drink spring water, it has a different effect on my palate than if I drink reverse osmosis water, distilled water, or any bottled water. I notice that with the spring water that I get from the earth, especially if it's from my local area, it has a more of a, I don't know how to say it, but like a wetter feeling, like when it hits my tongue. It really feels like it hydrates me more. Versus water that I get from a bottle, and more than likely not spring, but bottled water in general when I drink it. For me personally, I find that I don't have that sensation or that feeling that I feel quenched. I feel almost like I've got something inside of me, but I almost feel like it kind of can go down in my stomach and weigh me down. So one of the first things that I always tell people is, first things first, look for local spring water that's clean, that you can verify, get tested. The second source I would tell people to look for is bottled spring water from a company that you could purchase, because we're all buying water nowadays, believe it or not. And the third I would say to people would be to, buy a distiller, which isn't going to happen much. And I'm actually working on a project right now where we're going to be distilling water and remineralizing it and doing some really cool processes. And I'll be launching that video in the future. But that's why I put the distiller at number 3. And if you've ever met with me before, you've never heard me say that. I usually go right to the reverse osmosis after this. But the distiller, what's cool is it pulls all the water out. So if you have the ability and you have the resources to own your own distiller, I say go there. And then when you bring that water back, you can then spin that water, which helps restructure it or speak positive things into it as you spin it, which could maybe speed up that process. But then you would add minerals back to that water. Because distilled water, much like reverse osmosis water, is empty and there's nothing inside of it. And one thing to think about is, our blood or our plasma is mainly ocean water. That's why they can pump saline right into your bloodstream. And saline's like ocean water, so it's a lot of minerals. So if we drink, the fourth or fifth option of distilled water or reverse osmosis water, then what we're going to see is that we're going to have water there that's not going to have contaminants in it, which is a great thing, but we're going to need to restructure and remineralize that water. And we can do that in many ways. One of the ways we can do it is we can take some sea salt and add that to the water. And as we add that to the water, we can actually just swirl that water around in a circle. Now there's tons of devices out there. There's even these things called egg shapes that you can purchase that actually keep the water moving in this centrifugal force. And the idea with that is that it keeps that water fresh and keeps that structure nice, versus water that's kind of being forced down pipes. Obviously with reverse osmosis or distill, you're kind of having that same process of kind of pushing the water. And a lot of times when you push water, it wants to come back on you. And this is because water's naturally wanting to vortex. And so when we think about all these things, we want to really try to do our best effort to drink spring water. Spring water is the best. And when it comes to filtration, we want to look at distilled water that we don't put and store in plastic, obviously, or reverse osmosis water. And if we can't get to these waters, then we typically just want to, stick with, I don't know. After that, I would just go without water. But I know in certain circumstances we can't. Just go with what you can get. See if you can get some bottled spring water. But at the end of the day, I would say no to a lot of these water machines. Like I don't want to say any names, but water that they claim that the machines can alkaline the water or make it more alkaline. I would stay away from these machines. The reason why I stay away from these machines is I've actually experimented with some of them, and I found that they're alkalining the water. They say with plates and vibration and whatnot, but it's actually a lot of calcium carbonate that's used in a lot of these filters and a lot of other calcium products. And to me, that just isn't the most ideal way I want to alkaline water. If the water that I'm getting initially isn't already alkalined or isn't at the ideal pH, then I probably want to go look for water elsewhere. So just some things to think about. But one of the things that I also really want to mention is our body does need lots more water than we probably would think. They say per pound body weight you need to drink in ounces in water. But one of the other things that I always try to, do every single morning before I wake up is to drink a full 32 ounces of water. And sometimes I don't do that every morning, but I would at least try to get half that in first thing in the morning. And the other thing is to just remind yourself in the afternoon, mid-morning, afternoon, midday, and at night that we need to be drinking water. A lot of us like to drink teas and coffees, and these things can be beneficial for us. But a lot of times what happens with caffeinated beverages is they actually dehydrate us more. Also, if we talk a lot, like myself, for work or whatnot, we can also seem to dehydrate ourselves more as well. So staying hydrated is extremely important. And simply by putting a small reminder on your phone, you can actually help your body stay in tune with how much water it needs. In the book, Your Body's Many Cries for Water, he talks a lot about how there's all these different signs that are out there that allow you to understand how dehydrated or hydrated you are. And some of those things are just if you feel parched or if you have dry mouth. But the other thing that you can do is a skin test. And you can actually take your hand and you can actually pinch your skin, and based on how your skin, the elasticity of it, if it goes down real slow after you pinch it, that's a telltale sign that you're pretty dehydrated. So another thing to also think about when you're thinking about hydration, water quality, is how often are you peeing? You definitely want to be urinating at least every 2 to 4 hours throughout the day. If you're not, then that is another telltale sign that you are dehydrated. But another thing to really be thinking about when you think about water quality is to think about kind of more of a long-term strategy. And sometimes for me personally, it's a multi-step strategy. For example, I will go and source spring water when I can or purchase it. But for my home, I do reverse osmosis under the sink. And the reason why I do that is because for all my cooking water. Also, if the dog's gonna drink some water, or if I run out of spring water, I at least have a backup source of reverse osmosis water that I can then remineralize if I'm gonna drink it. But being able to use reverse osmosis water in all my cooking, it really helps cut down on any type of contaminants that I'd be adding just to be boiling water, or boiling water for, say, noodles. To me, it gets expensive if you're purchasing spring water and then you need to boil some noodles for the night, and then you pour that spring water and then you just dump that water out after you've boiled those noodles. This is where a reverse osmosis can come in handy and also help protect you from getting exposed to so much toxicity in our water. Because we know the water out of the tap is the worst thing ever, and we really want to be conscientious of it. Water from the tap contains antibiotics, tree pulp, fluoride, chemicals that really denature your sixth sense. And I say that because it's the truth. Fluoride, they have actually shown, can calcify your pineal gland. And this is the seedbed of what I call the Godhead in your body, your third eye, if you will. Your pineal gland regulates serotonin, which is your feel-good, melatonin, which helps you sleep, and DMT, which is released when you're in deep sleep. So the last thing we want to do is calcify this gland. By calcifying this gland, we really aren't able to see the beauty in life that's here for us, and it can really disrupt our mood. But enough on that, because I know you guys aren't going to drink tap water straight. You're going to filter it somehow, some way. And with reverse osmosis, you're able to get a lot of those compounds out of there. You know, that is something that you really want to take in consideration. Another thing to think about is when we bathe or when we shower. Obviously, if I have a reverse osmosis under my sink, and if I have mineral spring water that I'm getting out of a dispenser, what do I do when I shower? Well, for us, in our situation, we would prefer to do a whole house treatment of the water, a whole house reverse osmosis. And that's gonna be the best, because that's gonna clean all the water in the house. So even when you go to shower, it's gonna take out a lot of the chlorine and fluoride and a lot of the petrochemicals, a lot of the hydrocarbons, and a lot of the contaminants inside the water. So I would say this would be the most ideal situation across the board. But if you don't have the money to do that, because it can cost you around $3,000 to $5,000, and if you don't own your house and you live in an apartment, then there's no point in it. And so one of the things that you can do is just buy a shower filter. There's many shower filters out there, and I say go with, you know, the best bang for your buck. You know, the key things to look for is that it's taking out chlorine and chloramine. That's the key things. And then if it can take out more contaminants, then it's just a win-win. So if it's got certain minerals in it, like shungite or crystals, or it's spun in a certain way, there's all types of different products out there on the market. And I'm not going to endorse any in this conversation, because there's so many out there, and there might be a new one out there that I would want you to know about that I don't know about. But the idea is just to make sure that those main chemicals are removed out of the water, and your skin's gonna love you for that. So, talking about water, let's just recap right quick. We definitely want to see if we can get local spring water that's been tested and clean, first and foremost. Secondly, we want to go with spring water that we were purchasing, like Mountain Valley or bottled water. Third, we want to look at possibly doing a distilled water, bringing that back in, vortexing that, and adding minerals to it. Fourth, we want to do reverse osmosis, and we do a similar process where we vortex that water and add minerals back to it before we consume it. And those are going to be your main sources of water that you want to be looking for every day. And then the next step is to make sure you drink enough of that water every day. And the other thing is to make sure that if you are showering in your house multiple times a day or once a day, and I don't hate to admit this, but I just put this out there. If I'm not working out really hard, I typically don't shower. So I typically shower every 3 or 4 days. I like to keep the natural oils on my body. I like to clean my areas with the towel, with certain Castile soaps if I feel like I need to, but I try to stay out of soaking in the water, even though I have a shower filter, because I know that the filtration isn't going to be able to get everything out. So those are some of the strategies that I've used, some of the strategies that I've mentioned to many of you many of times, and something that I just wanted to put out there for you guys. You know, there's a lot of different things that are going on with water, and it's becoming a high commodity nowadays. It's a very valuable resource. And so becoming educated and being an educated consumer is very important and vital in this day and age. And with our ability, my ability to shoot this video and send it to you for free and you to watch it whenever, it really makes it prominent for us to be able to educate ourselves as well. So that's awesome. That's a blessing. So I'm just going to sign off here. If you guys have any questions about anything water related, hydration related, any tip or any knowledge you want on the books about Dr. Emoto or the videos, I can send you links. Just leave comments below and I will send those links accordingly. Also, if you're wanting to know about that book that I mentioned, Your Mini Cries for Water, I can also send that into a link as well. Just ask and I'll send it. All right, guys, I hope you learned a lot from this video today. And one thing to always remember is you're mainly water and you're sacred. So before you drink your next glass of water, I suggest, because I can't recommend anything, I'm not a doctor, you take your water and you spin it and you say, thank you. Thank you for hydrating me. Thank you for making me feel well. Thank you for helping all my body function properly. And thank you for being there for me. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing like a cold glass of water.